Be the Talk, episode 343, featuring Garen Jemian. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Garen Jemian. Garen, are you ready to talk?
I am ready to talk, Nathan.
Garen Jemian is an executive coach, leadership specialist, and the author of the recent book, Happy People Work Harder, The Leader's Guide to Inspiring Positive Change. Garen Jemian, welcome to the talk.
Thanks for having me, Nathan.
You talk in your talk about a hierarchy of joy. We all want to have, do, or be something. And you talk about motivation of employees, and it's best to hire people who are already motivated, because you mentioned that there are only three ways to motivate people. You can beat them, you can bribe them, or you can better them by empowering them. And so obviously the way to go is to empower them. I like the simple threefold way in which you think. Garen, please take us behind the talk.
Behind the talk. Well, it was kind of born with my background in management and business ownership. I used to run bars and clubs in the downtown scene in Montreal for over a decade, and my turnover rate was ridiculously high. We're talking in the hundreds of percentage. I went through about 400 employees in 8 years, and I tried absolutely everything. And unfortunately, most of those things were linked to the old ways of managing people. And so I delved into the world of coaching, professional coaching, and I spent quite a few years studying the art. And now what I came to realize is that the old ways of motivating people that have been there for thousands of years still reign true today. And what's happening now is this silent revolution of the workforce, where we're empowered with choice. And as much as our consumerism is disposable, so is our employment. As our sense of security increases by choice, well, then all of a sudden the old methods of bribing, which is of course salary, and beating, which I call fear motivation, as in do your job or else, is either said or felt throughout the workplace. Everywhere I work, it still reigns true. There has to be a better way. And so now you have leaders who aren't necessarily in their 60s or 70s, but more in their 40s or 50s, who are struggling with this quote unquote millennial issue, and they're not quite understanding how to bridge the gap. And my job is to help educate a lot of people, helping them understand how motivation works and how to maximize the potential of doing so.
Yeah, well, and I think that we're at a place right now. So many things are being automated. So many things are being optimized. Retail is in big trouble with all of the automation that's happening. And it's almost tragic in a way, because the more we want to help people who are kind of more or less trapped at the bottom with better, higher wages, the more of that gets automated, and the more companies look at that as a way or an excuse to automate more. What's a company to do? Because if you're not changing, if you're not really on the front end of culture, being a fun place to work, being a motivational, empowering, upward place to work, you're almost on the way out. So how can kind of a second tier company, even a third tier company, if somebody's watching this and they're leading and they've been brought in to turn something around, how can they help turn it around?
It's a good question. And it's also, I think step one is education. I think there's a lot of awareness to be created in the workplace, simply because when I say the word coaching, all people hear is, oh, you're a life coach. That's great. We don't need that. What people don't understand is before work, there was life, and before life, there's nothing. And so inherently, all coaching is kind of life coaching. But what we're really trying to do is humanize the workplace and educate the leaders on how to better communicate and collaborate with the people that make up their companies. So what they should do, if they could afford so, I would definitely opt into developing the leadership core with coaching abilities, which is the primary purpose of my day-to-day work. But if we're talking about a third tier company that's really just starting at the ground, at the bottom, don't have money to invest or whatnot, reading is the cheapest and best way to get this across. And it's not just reading, but it's being open to the idea that there's a world beyond fear and money motivation. And so that openness is paramount for change. And it all starts with the person's ability to accept that there might be a better way.
That always opens the door. There might be a better way. And then how do we find that better way? What are can you give me, maybe just a case study or two of people that you've worked with and you helped them find that better way? You helped expand their fixed thinking and not just suggest that there was a better way, but they've actually worked with you to find that better way. And then what happened?
I think my best example, which was the biggest aha, wasn't necessarily an employee to an employer. It was peer-to-peer improved on collaboration. And I have a technique, I call it, and I'm not really reinventing the wheel, but it's just my way of seeing the algorithms of interaction. And I call it IPA, and it's not India Pale Ale. It's actually intention, permission equals agreement. And so I had a director of biz dev, business development, and a VP of sales that were just not collaborating for quite some time, of 18 months, I'd say. So you could just imagine the negative impact that had on the company. And I went in to coach, the director of business development. And I just showed him a simple method of humanizing the approach of stating your intention clearly and honestly, asking permission to move ahead and coming to a clear agreement. And to expand on that, what I mean by intention is when you state your intention clearly and honestly, sincerely, what it does is the person ahead of you that you're trying to collaborate with has their guards up. They don't trust you. And so the best way to create trust, a deeper bond with the person ahead, is to just go in there with hands wide open, being completely honest with your intentions to eliminate all doubt. And so that's what he did. And asking permission is something as simple as, are you okay with that? So for example, Nathan, you and I have not been getting along for the longest time. My intention today is to come to you and just see if we can hash out our differences and move forward for the greater good of the company. Are you okay with that? Permission. And now you have a choice. Yes, no, or maybe. And that maybe is usually, I'm busy right now, but I love where you're coming from. Can we reschedule something? So just approaching it that way, my client goes off, and I told him, I said, I'm not big on giving advice. Any coach that says they're a coach and they just go in there giving advice and opinion, I just don't see it as coaching. The answers have to come from within. And I said, I won't mention his name, of course, for confidentiality, but I said, look, I'm not big on opinion or advice, but I'm going to give it to you this time. There's two things that could happen. One, you get fired, and I look like a big loser and I'll get fired. Option B, it works and it's genius. Sure enough, a few hours later, I get a text message saying, I can't believe it worked. The next day, the VP of sales walks into my office, says, can we talk for a second? And he says, I don't know what you did, but you just solved an 18-month standstill in 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And that's a perfect example of humanizing the corporate experience where you're putting aside your egos and your status and your titles and your power, and you just become two human beings collaborating, which is essentially the foundation of all business.
Well, and I love that because you're honoring the other person because, yeah, we do have a choice. And that's the whole employee disengagement issue. We're disengaged because that's the only choice we have. And we're just going to suck it up, disengage and keep the status quo until we go the way of Sears Roebuck here.
Exactly.
So the IPA, intention, permission, and equals agreement. Intention, Permission equals agreement. Great formula. Great formula.
That's my mind. If you read my book, you'll just see a bunch of little formulas, like the C4 method of converting negativity or the GPS method for coaching or, the PPV approach to maximizing your potential and finding your sweet spot. I'm a big fan of algorithms and just the science behind motivation.
I love it. We've been talking and enjoying this conversation with Garen Jemian. His talk is called Motivation Beyond Money, and there better be some motivation in your company beyond the money. It's very well titled. We're going to come right back with Garen in just a moment for the Blitz Round. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we're back with the Blitz Round with Garen Jemian. I'm going to ask Garen a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent talk. Garen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
First question, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
A bit of both. I was referred to the president of TEDx Concordia through a friend of mine. Went to have breakfast, and by the time we finished our eggs and bacon, I was invited to be a TED speaker.
All right. Excellent. Are you a memorizer, improviser, or blender?
I'd say blender. I'm ideally an improviser, though, but TED has a format that requires script, and so I had to find a way to make that as natural as possible while following the guidelines.
What is a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
Be yourself, be honest, be fearless, and be open to the unexpected, and be funny as much as possible.
Garen, this is the cut for time question. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
Cut out. I didn't cut anything out, Nathan. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, good.
Yeah.
So you started with the end in mind. You knew the framework. You knew the principles of, get right to the point, tell some stories, be authentic, but you were trimming as you went.
That is correct. At first they wanted a 20-minute talk. Then it got cut down to 10. Luckily they asked me to headline the show. So I was the last speaker, and yes, my jokes drifted along a little bit too far. So I think I spoke for 13 minutes and no one complained. So I was happy about that.
So I was a closer also. What's your advice for fellow closers out there?
I think it's the advice for any public speaking, which is, realize that the audience is probably more scared than you are. And just go up there and have as much fun as you can and humanize the experience by connecting with the crowd.
What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened before or during your talk, Garen?
If you have 2 minutes, this one's a doozy. So we're backstage, and they had gotten a hostess from the United Nations coming from Connecticut, I think, or Cincinnati. It was a C word. And she's like, Garen, how do you pronounce your name? And tell me a bit about yourself for me to call you on stage. I said, it's Garen Jemian. So she starts writing it down phonetically. So the letter JAY-ME the letter N. So I'm like, Garen Jemian, and she's like, tell me something funny about yourself. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I like motorcycles or this, that. She goes, tell me something funny. I said, I'm an avid river dancer, right? She goes, would you river dance on stage? I said, sure. I'm not a river dancer. So she gets on stage, and I've imagined this moment. I don't know if when you get called to a TED Talk, it's usually because you've dreamt of doing this for a long time. I've been wanting to be a TED Talker since it started. I don't know if it's been more than a decade. And so I always imagined this moment that I'd walk on stage, they'd call my name, and huzzah, right?
Moment of glory, yes.
Exactly.
Yes,
and so
you've arrived.
Garen has arrived. And so I'm on the side of the stage. and she gets on stage, and she's like, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is an avid river dancer, and so on and so forth. And I'm laughing a little bit. And it's like, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Garen Jemian, Jemin, and then you just hear my wife from the bleachers. Garen Jemian, it's Jemian. And so here I am, and I just stumble on stage dying of laughter. I got tears of laughter in my eyes, and I start river dancing with her, and I just got on my knee and I said, you destroyed my intro. And this was live, right? And sure enough, it set the tone and it broke the ice. And I was like, my worst nightmare became the best part of my speech.
Go for it. Yeah. I mean, use the drama, try to have a sense of humor.
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely.
You know, this is, I'll leave this on, but, I mean, I recently did, I was a little shocked because I was literally the last person on the stage, a year and a half ago when I closed at TEDx, and then they invited me back to be an MC 2 days before the event. I'd already bought my ticket. It's 2 hours away. I was just going to say thank you. Bought my $50 ticket, no expectation. And so my point is this, the reason that happened is because you answered the question, Riverdale. You gave kind of a glib answer, and that's all the MC. When you're emceeing, that's all you have to go on is what the person tells you. And if they don't tell you that, all you do is read their name and try to make something up, which is not really great. So that's why I know that's why that turned out the way it did. It's because from the other side, it's real important. That's an art that isn't really taught too much. I've put a few thoughts about what does it take to hire a good MC or to be a good MC yourself, and you can find that somewhere. I don't know where that is. This is Garen's interview, not mine, but we've been enjoying Garen Jemian's talk and this interview. His talk is called Motivation Beyond Money. We have a link to that talk on our website at BeTheTalk.com. You can also check out Garen's book as well as his website at GarenJemian.com. GarenJemian. GarenJemian.com. And we'll be back with Garen Jemian for the final word of advice in just a moment. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And it's time for the final word of advice with Garen Jemian. What is it?
Final word of advice. I'd say be fearless. Be fearless in your message. Be fearless, without worry of criticism, as far as your message goes, because to create change requires thinking and speaking outside the box.
Garen Jemian, thanks so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Nathan, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.